Hello and welcome to attaQ. My name is Jakob. I'm your host and you're watching a attaQ episode. And in this episode, we're having a look at Shaper Synthesizer. So before we begin, I want to say thank you attaQ for sponsoring this video. It's the same developer who actually made the synth. So yes, this is a paid review, but I am allowed to say whatever I want, which I will, and I wouldn't want it any other way. For those of you who are impatient and have ADHD like me, I'm sitting here shaking my knee right now. You know, that thing you do just to keep yourself sane. Shaper Synthesizer sounds really good, and the strength of it lies in its modulation. You see, most of the interface in here is very minimalistic, and there's not much to get through, so any beginner would be quite comfortable starting out with this synthesizer. And for people who like doing sound design, yeah, you can get really deep thanks to the modulation section and how attaQ has just implemented it. So Shaper Synthesizer can be used in standalone mode, and it can also be used as an AUV3. Now, I'll be showing the standalone mode mostly because that's how I love loading my synthesizers, you know, in a full screen mode. Now we're going to go through the synthesizer and see what it does, but first of all, I just want to highlight two things, namely the presets and also the settings menu. Now, the preset list can be found up here by tapping this area. However, if you want to save your presets, then you use this button here. This is a bit odd, and I would recommend to attaQ to kind of make it different. Maybe put like a disk icon, like many other developers do, right next to the preset list. Just make it really clear for the user where you can save your presets. There's another reason why I'm starting with the preset list. Right now, inside the preset list, it's easy to accidentally delete your own stuff, your own work, because it doesn't prompt you and ask you if you really want to delete something when you hit the basket icon. I've already told attaQ about this. I sent a list of stuff that I thought would be good to fix, and they responded. So yeah, just keep an eye out for future updates so you won't accidentally delete your presets. Right, so the settings menu. Inside here you can find voicing settings. Basically how many notes you can play at the same time, and this actually gets saved with the preset. So if you save a preset with 8 in voicing, it will load that way, even though the previous preset might have been set to 3 in voicing. Here you can also set your BPM for when you're syncing to a host. And yeah, that's it. Let's get into the synth. So Shaper Synthesizer has 3 sound sources, 2 oscillators and a noise generator. Now the 2 oscillators have 4 standard waveforms each, and then you'll find regular controls such as volume, pan, phase, and pitch. Now some of you might already know how much I am in love with this super saw sound. If you didn't know, now you know. In order to make super saw sounds, you need a unison mode, and the unison mode inside Shaper Synthesizer sounds really good, and it's really tweakable. Right below our sound sources, we've got the filter with 3 filter modes: low pass, high pass, and band pass. The filter also has a drive, which sound really good, and it really heats up the sound. Next to the filter, we've got the routing section. This one is interesting because you can actually run all of the sound sources straight through without ever going into the filter. Or you could just select some of it to go through the filter by highlighting them like this. really nice and gives you a lot of control over your sound. The sound sources, filters and routing is basically a third of the interface of Shaper Synthesizer. The rest of it is the modulation section, which is very powerful, and then the effects section. Now we're gonna have a much deeper look at the modulation section, but first I just want to show you the effect section real quick because it's so straightforward. You get to it by switching over to that view from oscillator view to effects view. And inside here we've got 3 slots for different effects. Now you have 8 effects to choose from: bit crusher, chorus, delay, tempo sync delay, distortion, filter, phaser and reverb. The thing I like the most in here, to be honest, is the distortion. My first bit of criticism here is that the reverb sounds very metallic. That might be nice for some things, but sometimes I just want something softer, more swashed out. And I told that to attaQ, and considering attaQ's track record so far, the way that they've listened to the community and also changed stuff inside the app by request of the community, I'm thinking that maybe I'll get lucky with this one. Now I think it is time that we have a look at the modulation section. I love this thing. Now in here we can find 2 envelopes, envelope A and B, and 2 LFOs, LFO A and B. Now the first envelope, however, is also being used as the amp envelope, but that does not mean that you cannot use it for anything else. Now setting up modulations is, I love this. It's so straightforward. Just select the source by tapping and holding on the page selector for it. So I'm using envelope A and I'm dragging it onto the resonance knob. Now I just release it and there we get a pop-up. All I have to do now is to set the signal strength and also decide which way I want the knob to move or the control to move. I know that the rest of the synthesizer is grayed out, but if you look closely, you can see that when I'm dragging this, it actually shows you what the modulation will do to that control. It's very helpful to beginners to understand the relations between modulation signals and also controls and what will happen to them. Now, if we tap out of here and we play this, we can actually see the modulation happening. Now, if you want to do it with an LFO, it's the same thing. You simply drag and drop it. And if I drop it onto the same control here, then we get this pop-up. And then we can also see the envelope control that we just assigned. And we can also see the LFO. However, there is one function in here with the LFO that you need to be aware of. And it's this thing here. Right now, this function is on, it's highlighted. And when I drag the control, you can see that I'm able to set the signal strength so that the control will now move from counterclockwise to clockwise or the other way around. However, if you want it to work like the envelope signal does, moving from center to counterclockwise or center to clockwise, then all you have to do is to tap this so it's grayed out, and now it works just like that. I want you to have a look up here in the upper right corner where it says routings. If we tap this, then we get an overview of all the modulation setups we've done. Now in here you can continue working, tweaking your patches, fine-tuning them, removing destinations, and even adding destinations. And when you press add destination, you get a long list of all of the controls that you can modulate. And I want you to have a look down here where it says slot 1, knob 1, slot 1, knob 2, and on and on and on. This is referring to the effects section. Yes, we can modulate all of the knobs inside the effects section for some really interesting results. And on top of that, you can also modulate the modulators. Let's say, for instance, you wanted to modulate the speed of the LFO, the frequency of the LFO with envelope A. No problem. Just drag it, drop it, and set the strength, and there you go. Now you're controlling the frequency of LFO-A with envelope A. Now there is one important thing I want to highlight here. You cannot modulate the envelope controls. So they're out of the picture. If you try dragging something here and do that, that won't work. But the LFOs, both of the LFOs and all of their controls can be modulated. I'm absolutely loving this. The modulation section makes the synth really, really deep, and you can get so much out of it. Now, there is more I want to show you, and I want to head over to the envelope. If we look here, we don't have to settle for linear slopes for our envelopes. Nope, you can get logarithmic curves and exponential curves. And this is so tweakable, and this goes for all of the curves, for the attaQ curve, the decay curve, and also the release curve. This is lovely. Now, being able to curve the envelopes like this, and also have 10 seconds of attaQ time and 10 seconds of release time, well, it makes the synthesizer really well suited for pads. Now, when we get into the LFOs, they're called LFOs, and we're so used to seeing triangular waveforms, sine waveforms, square waveforms, and sawtooth waveforms when it comes to modulation. But here, your modulation can look like anything, because you can actually draw it in yourself. Well, it's not like you're drawing, it's more like double tapping and you get a node and then you drag. In here, you also have the same curving tool as you do in the envelope section. And on top of this, all of this tweaking that you do in here, it can all be snapped to a grid. But check this out. This grid is changeable. Make sure the snap is selected, and then we tap grid again, and now we have our new grid. So if I tap here, you can see that everything snaps to this new grid. This is super nice. And if you're also running the frequency of the LFO locked to the BPM, then it's so easy for you to build rhythmical patterns that goes along with the tempo. Now, I did mention I sent a list to Autumn Rock about stuff I wanted, fixed or tweaked or something like that. And here it is. And the last one, the knob sensitivity, it was driving me a little bit mad that I couldn't get to the sweet spots at the very beginning of a knob. And in order to get something like that, you have to have a very logarithmic curve, a very, very, bent curve for the data when you're moving the knob. So I suggested changing that. However, here's the thing. I know from my development time with Agonizer, together with Kaiaras, how dangerous it can be to change stuff like that when you didn't think about it from the beginning. There were other things that we didn't think of, and then when we changed them, we broke like everything else, meaning like every preset couldn't be used because they didn't work anymore. That's a thing that could happen. Now, I wrote that to Autumn Rock, and of course they already knew about that being able to happen, and they said we'll make sure that that does not happen. What did you think about Shaper Synthesizer? Hopefully I've been able to show what's so nice with it, and hopefully I've been able to showcase its sound. I mean, all of the sounds you heard in here were sounds made by me, but they didn't take me much time to make, simply because of how tweakable and how easy the interface is. I really like the big envelopes and the big LFO windows. Maybe there's stuff you want to see added or changed or something, just go wild in the comment section. And if you want to go and get Shaper Synthesizer yourself, then I'll put a link down in a pinned comment and also in the description, so it's very easy to find. Now, before you leave, if you like this type of content, then why don't you give me a thumbs up? And if you did not like this content, then give me a thumbs down. If you want to support me in any other way, then you can always share my videos. That's great. And if you want to support me in a financial way, then you can do that through PayPal, Patreon, or just checking out my music. And I like it when people check out my music. You can find a list of links to my music down in the description. And as usual, I wish you a very productive week. Now go finger all of your stuff and have a lot of fun doing it.